Yes, please. Okay. Apparently, I'm live. I don't see any. I see blackness. I see a screen. There we go. uh, hey, welcome back to my live stream. I'm not planning on doing this every day, but I just happen to be doing it 2 days in a row. So we'll see how this goes. But what I wanted to address this time here, let's launch Discord. Hey, look, there's Discord. So somewhere on the Boris Effects Synthize channel, somebody asked a question about how do. Hey, look, there's there's me. How do I make a an object attach to a tracker? And the thing I want to point out, like right off the bat, is that in Synthize, we don't have, when you talk about objects, you're talking about moving objects. So these are like the parent object to a mesh. And I wish by the way, I looked on the Discord and I tried to find the question. I just couldn't find it. But if the intention is to just attach a mesh to a tracker, Synthize doesn't really do that. It doesn't do that because it's not Maya. It's not Blender. It's not Houdini. It's not a 3D animation application. Although I wish it would adopt more 3D animation capabilities. Oh, hey, I'll move my microphone over. Maybe that'll help. So what you have to think of is when you're talking about objects, you're talking about a moving object. Let's go to the 3D view. So we have a camera, and we can go shot, add moving object. And then you'll get this little geometric object. And let's move it around there. So that's the object. I'm going to undo that so that it doesn't exist anymore. And I'm going to show you how to attach a mesh to a tracker, but you've got to have the mesh parented to an object. That's the only thing that's complex about this. It's not complex at all. You'll see. So let's see what we've got here. Tutorials. I think this is it. And I wish. Remember yesterday when I just grabbed that MP4 file and just went and dragged it into Blender? Hey, I can do that in Synthize too. So that's pretty cool. I've never really done that, but apparently you can just drag it right into Synthize. So that's neat. All right, so this is a PAL. Everything's fine. It's UHD 3840 by 2160. I'm gonna hit OK. Hey, look, it's a gecko. Let's spread this out to full screen. And yeah, sure, look at that. Neat. Our gecko's looking around. It's doing his thing. View normal speed, that's good. Because if you put it, let's just review this. Frame by frame, quarter speed, half speed, double speed. If you do frame by frame, Synthize is just going to play as fast as it can. And that is much faster than the 25 frames per second. If you look in the lower left of the viewport, it says playback rate 59 point, somewhere around 60 frames per second. And as soon as you move the mouse, that goes away because it's now going to report other things like the mouse position on screen. Okay, enough of that. Let's go back to the beginning of the shot, and I'm going to track a feature. This would be one of the shots that would be ideal if I had some of the stuff I talked about yesterday. I don't usually click on the little create new trackers magic wand. I usually just use the C key on the keyboard, and wherever I click, it's going to create a tracker. So let's track this. I know that he turns his head a bit, and because of that, I should be a little careful about what feature I'm going to track. Could be that. Maybe we track, let's just quickly look through here. You know what? I changed my mind. Let's hold down the Z key, Z, and just click right there. So we're going to track that. That's going to be our feature. We're also going to set this to, I don't know, 8 and 8 key now, key smooth. So every 8 frames. And then, as I've said in the past, you know, if I tap the space bar and, oh, look, it's just marching ahead. That's because stop on auto key is not on. I usually have that on by default. So if I tap the space bar, it'll stop on every auto key. The other thing you can do, just hold down the D key with your middle finger. And if you see it go off target, just lift your finger rapidly and there you go. So I'm just going to track this. I'm going to track the whole way. I always think of it like a lawnmower. So you know how you have a handle on the lawnmower, and if you let go of the handle, it just shuts off the lawnmower. Same thing with the D key. If you just hold your finger on it, it'll keep going until you lift. It's just like releasing that bar on the lawnmower. My wife recorded me doing that with our lawnmower for a different tutorial that never got done because of all this stuff that's been going on in my life. All right, let's lock that tracker. There we go. The plus button on the numeric keypad. Tracker looks good. Hit 5, make sure there are no jumps. Yeah, that looks good to me. So let's say we wanted to attach a mesh to that. The answer I gave on the Discord was, this is easy to do. Just open up the GOH room and do it there. First thing we're going to do, though, is we're going to add a mesh. Let's lock this, and let's bring up the view menu and show image. And right-click on Pan 2D to make it big. What mesh do we want to put in there? Let's attach, what do we have? Head, high, low, mid. I think these are the new Boris Effects heads. Yeah, I'm not a fan. Let me show you something very quickly. Oh, actually, I can't because all of my master geometry exists on my main drive, so which is offline right now because that's got all the jobs on it. So I'm actually not going to do that right now. We'll do that in the next tutorial. So for now, I'm going to add not head high. I don't want that. I want generic man relaxed. What are some of these? Is this my generic man relaxed? It might be. Anyway, I don't like that either. Let's pick something that you would find typically on a gecko's head. Something like a teapot. That makes sense. We'll put a teapot on his head. Something like that. And I'm going to move the teapot in the viewport so that it's generally like, you know, right over the feature we tracked. This is just illustrative or illustrative. But here's our tracker. So we want the mesh to be stuck to the tracker. Okay, no problem. We're going to go to the GOH room, and we're going to say GOH toolbar, GOH create. We're going to hold down the shift key, and we're going to click, and you see that little tiny object moving around there? I'm going to put that right in the middle of the mesh. Cool. It's right in the middle of the mesh. Let's look over on the side view. Yeah, there it is. Object's in the middle of the mesh. It's in the middle of the mesh. And now what I'm going to do, let's go back to the GOH room. I'm going to select my tracker. So I can do that right here in the hierarchy view, which interestingly is not opening up. That might be a bug because I'm looking over here in my floating hierarchy view, and when I click on this, it actually does open up. Huh. So that's a little funny. Nevertheless, you just need to select the tracker. Once you've got the tracker selected, you can do this a number of ways, but we'll do it really simply. So drop onto mesh, and the tracker, then you see that little tick mark appear there, that little like red thing. That indicates that the tracker now has a seed point. You can see that in this tracker's room right here. Let me move the hierarchy view out of the way again. So that seed point is right here. I'm going to undo. See, no seed. And if I go track, drop onto mesh, I can do that also from the tracker's room. And you'll see there's now a constraint applied, lock point. This is all done automatically, so you don't even really have to think about this. But it's locking the point to this seed point location. And that seed point location, let's go into the 3D room, is right on the surface of the mesh. So we're looking through the camera. We're drawing a straight line out until, like, right from the center of the camera, right through the tracker, until it hits the object. And that is how we drop a tracker onto the mesh. Let's go back to the GOH room. All right, so now let's select our object. Hey, look, this unrolled now. Let's see if I can close that. Yeah, I can't. Look at it. This is definitely a bug. Look, I'll close tracker, open it, close it, open it, but it doesn't happen over here. That should be, those two things should be mirroring one another. Interesting. I'm going to keep this open on screen just so you can see what I'm doing. I'll shrink that over a little bit. Okay, now, we want it to just stick. We just want it to stick in the camera view underneath the tracker. Well, for that, I'm going to unlock this on the, what key or what frame are we on? We're on frame 0, good. So I'm going to unlock it on the X, so I'll move on the X axis. I'm going to unlock it on the Y, I'll move on the Y axis in relation to the camera as viewed through the camera's frustum. Now, how do you use GOH tracking? That's a solving mode. If you actually, you can see it in the solver. If you look here, it's solving in GOH track mode. But there is no go button for GOH tracking. There is only the play button, which you can do by tapping the spacebar. And voila! That's it. End of tutorial. I tried to cover some more things, but as you can see, our object is tracked, like stuck to the tracker. That's how you do things. I mean, it really couldn't be more simple than that. Now, that's the most basic thing to know about GOH tracking. And with GOH tracking, I don't actually use it the way it was designed so much. Like, so if I had a scan of the gecko's head, well, I could actually just use the geometry and I wouldn't even have to put a 2D tracker in there. I could just align the geometry and then hit play. And Synthesize would use the geometry as the tracker. Pretty cool. You still need an object, though. The mesh still needs to be parented to an object. Be that as it may. All right, let me show you some other fun stuff. I'm going to, just so we can unlock some of the secrets of the GOH tracker, because I've only been recording this for how long? I don't even know how long now. Couldn't be more than 10 minutes, but I'm gonna put another tracker in. Go back to the tracker's room. And let's track a different feature. Let's find something else that, like when he turns his head, it, you know, goes really out of focus. But let's see what we got here. I don't know. Corner of his mouth, maybe. That'll be good. Right here. See, click. There's our tracker. Now, I want this tracker to inherit the same characteristics as the other tracker. So I'm going to undo creating it. I'm going to select the last tracker that we did, where we had key now and key smooth set to 8. And now that I have it selected and I create a tracker, it's going to adopt those things. It's also going to adopt the size of the tracker. So that's nice. If you're making trackers and you want one to look like the other trackers around it, then just select the previous tracker that you want its characteristics. Okay, here we go. I'm just going to hold down the D key again. Cross your fingers. Because the tracker is making some changes in terms of the focus and the light around, but boy, man, it just sticks. I'm not having to really do a lot of user interaction. Yesterday, I feel like I complained a lot about SynthEyes. I'm like, why can't it do this? It's not that important because clearly the tracker is super good, but I still want those things. Anyway, let's lock the tracker because it appears to be fine. Now, I'm going to show you something. We're going to use the trackers to drive other things about our object. So, for this, I'm not going to do a drop onto, that whole thing where track, drop onto mesh. I'm not going to do that. This time what I'm going to do is there's a little place button. Where is that? It's in the 3D, it's in the perspective viewport. So in the perspective viewport, which by the way, if I was in the trackers room and I want this to be the perspective viewport, I can just click there and select perspective. So that's another way to do that. You can stay in the trackers room. You can select whatever layout you want. I've just created a new custom layout by making this camera view the perspective view. I just want to let you know that. So be that as it may, I am going to use the place button, and I'm going to place this tracker. I'm going to just do this. I'm going to drag around and just pick a spot on the mesh that I want to align to that tracker. Super cool. All right. So those two trackers are now placed on the mesh. And once again, when you do that, it makes a constraint, lock point, and it gives it a seed location. All automatic. It's not a lot you have to think about. All right, let's keep the hierarchy view over here. Now, back on frame 0, here's what I'm going to do. This is going to be kind of wild. You're going to go, wow. Or maybe you won't. All right, let's see what we got here. Let me close this window. Hey, look. I'm slightly getting used to it. My voice volume is a bit quiet. Can I turn it up a bit? I can. Here, hold on. How's that? Better? Oh, that's too hot. That's like clipping. I'm watching my meters. That's like, I'm right up at the edge there. I have to not shout. So, all right, I hope that, well, no, that's clipping. Okay, what I really need, I need a director. I need somebody to like be the director. I'm going to leave it where it is. I'm just going to speak more loudly. Okay, back to the tutorial. So for this, we're going back to our object. And I can't select the object here. I can select the trackers apparently, but nothing highlights. That's so weird. I'm going to say that's a bug. All right. We have dropped this tracker. We have placed this tracker on the mesh. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to unlock, at frame 0, I'm going to unlock the Z. And let's see what we get here. Okay. We have all of our trackers in there. Good. Oh. The trackers, they actually need to be attached to the object. So, there we go. Okay. Now the object. Let's click on the key button. What we're saying here is we're going to remove all these keyframes from all of these channels. I want to do that. So there you go. Hey, look at that. Now our big teapot is now tracking to both trackers. That's pretty cool. And in the 3D view, when you see that, you know, the object is moved much closer to the camera. So let's undo that. See the tracker way back there. And then GOH, let's make this a quad perspective. And as I play forward, oops, I'm just holding down the D key again. Again, there's no solve button with GOH tracking. You just hit the play button and it solves. You have to play to solve. It won't solve in real time. Honestly, I've been asking for this for years. I just want a always solve button. So that it's always solving. So that if I moved one of the trackers, then I'd see the mesh resolve. Anyway, what's the difference between drop onto mesh function and place function? Drop onto mesh is just going to use the camera's view, and it's going to draw that straight line out until it hits a mesh. It's going to draw that straight line out through the tracker until it hits a mesh. Then that's drop onto mesh. Place just allows me to randomly or arbitrarily pick a point on the mesh and place it. So each of them has its place, so to speak. Okay, but there's more. Let's do more here. Let's rotate, you know, that's the roll. So I'm just checking that's the roll. Okay. You can hand keyframe these things too. So, you know, that just indicates there's a keyframe on frame 0 with the value of 0. But let's unlock the roll. Oh, look at that. So that's pretty cool. So not only have we locked the mesh to the photography using an object, we can also control its roll. We can control its tilt, pan. But here's the thing. As with all things, if you're going to solve something in 3D, you have to have enough points, and there's got to be enough parallax in order to do that. The other thing you need to take into consideration is I don't have a mesh for the gecko head. So if I had a scan, then I could bring in the scan and I could track a bunch of features on it, and then I could use that place button down here and place my trackers where they should appear on the mesh, and then unlock the joints and locks over on the left, and theoretically it will snap into place. And it'll snap into place every time I advance one keyframe or one frame. So if I hit the play button, every time it goes forward a frame, it's going to resolve. Again, I just want a button that says always solving. Anyway, okay, so it projects points from the camera view. Yes, that's exactly correct. So if we look in the trackers room and we switch back to the camera view here, these trackers, these two trackers, that you'll see there's like a little blue, you know, gizmo that you see that show up after you've either placed or dropped onto mesh. indicating that it is locked, that there's a constraint, and that you'll see that constraint is right under the tracker. So it's just that straight line drawing straight through the tracker until it hits the mesh. Now we can even move our seed points around. Let's do that. Let's take, I'm going to replace this back in the 3D room for this tracker. I'm going to, with the place button selected, now I'm going to say, no, you know what? I want it to be the top of the handle here. That's where I want to connect to the mouth. Now that I've replaced that, and I go into the GOH room, I select my object, and we see there are keyframes there. As soon as you deselect the keyframes, you'll now see that that new tracker that I placed now is attached to the corner of his mouth. And now we just hit play. And again, it just tracks. It'll do rotation. It'll do, and you can get really, this can get really complicated. You get a distance constraint here. So if you always want something at a particular distance from the camera, these trackers will do their best to solve for what you're saying. I want to do the rotation and I want to do the translation on the X and Y. Actually, I have Z unselected as well. But you also see that it's moving slightly in and out on the Z axis. There we go. 8 key frames these. There we go. So there you go. So you see it moving closer to and farther away from camera. So you get so much more control. Could we make this so that it only moved on a plane? Yeah, we could absolutely do that. You know, you could do that with distance constraints. You could do that with, I mean, that's a much more complicated tutorial. But I just wanted to address what I saw on Discord, and I wish I could find the question. Where is that? It's up here somewhere. there's somewhere up here. I looked and I could not find it. Hey, look, there's me again. But if anybody wants to point that out to me, I'll probably, after this video finishes processing, I will post this to Discord and show just how easy this is. This is a terrible, you know, I think that's kind of an ugly, that's fine. We have our gecko with its head stuck inside of a teapot, which is funny. That's just funny to me. Let's do perspective. Yeah, there we go. Any other questions? So CNDP38 Long Jiao. Hi. I don't know how to pronounce your name, and I apologize. But that's it. I guess I'm done. I'm going to stop streaming now. And if you have any questions, you know, leave them in the comments. I can do these quick tutorials to answer the questions. And then if you want to drop in, I obviously this should be more scheduled. So people know when to tune in. But there you go. I hope to see you all soon. All right, bye. Stop streaming. Yes.